everyone, this is Speaker Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're quickly going to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. And as we come closer to its release worldwide, we'll speculate as to whether it will indeed become the first and only movie of 2021 to gross $1 billion worldwide. Now, there might be spoilers for the previous Spider-Man films, both within the MCU and also the Sam Raimi films and the Andrew Garfield films as well, and also perhaps some details disclosed regarding the rest of the films within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so just be aware of that when going into this overall video. Now, as it goes now, at the time of making this video, we literally are now 2 weeks away from the release of Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, it does release internationally on December the 15th, and then shortly afterwards will release in US cinemas on December the 17th. So, will it indeed make $1 billion worldwide? I think it probably will do. It's going to be close, but I think it probably will end up crossing that threshold, but it won't be by much overall. Now, in terms of the movies itself, as we all know, there's been so much hype and speculation and excitement regarding as to what will happen in the movie. Following the various subplots and synopsis surrounding this film, it would indeed be the expansion into the multiverse within the MCU. We already saw the origins of that within the finale of Loki itself, but this will be the first real big entry into the overall concept that we will indeed have multiple, or potentially have multiple versions of characters, not only within the Sony multiverse, but also within the Marvel films as well. So that in itself will already raise a lot of curiosity, especially amongst hardcore fans who, of course, are used to this type of storytelling throughout the comic books and novelizations as well. So to finally see that narrative be expanded more into the movies is always going to generate a lot of hype and excitement. Many people in general will wonder where indeed this will take the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as we are very much continuing the Phase 4 already throughout the various Disney Plus shows. We can clearly see the indications that Marvel indeed wants to branch out and diversify into lesser known names and characters and really spread out the universe beyond the original group of Avengers that we saw in Phase 1. So that's always going to raise curiosity and interest amongst many fans within the MCU. The MCU itself is still the strongest brand in entertainment today, so any movie released, particularly concerning Spider-Man, is always going to garner a lot of interest. The added narrative, certainly what we got from the trailers, is that we will indeed see an emergence of the previous Spider-Man villains from the Sony films. Again, will always raise excitement amongst fans, and of course this leads on to perhaps the film's biggest selling point, the potential, and it is at this stage still potential, to see all of the previous live-action Spider-Man actors, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland, sharing the screen all together for the first time. Now, I question this myself. It's not really something that I'm particularly excited for, but the general anticipation amongst fans, particularly on social media, is that this is the one thing that they are mostly looking forward to regarding this movie, and they will very much be disappointed if they don't indeed see the three actors on screen together. If you follow the narratives regarding this movie, there's been so much theorizing and speculation, rumors and stories, certain Instagram posts and supposed leaks and images as to whether these three are in the movie together as well. So all of those reveals and narratives is always going to cause a lot of discussion, particularly on social media, which is exactly what both Sony and Marvel want. So that in itself, another indicator as to how well this movie is going to perform. And in general, Spider-Man has always been a highly prolific and very commercially successful property. In terms of live action, we go way back in terms of the Sam Raimi films. The first film itself, released in 2002, was very much the next big step in really seeing the comic book movie genre become the dominant force in all mainstream entertainment, following, of course, the first set of Blade films, and then shortly after that, the Bryan Singer X-Men films. The Spider-Man Sam Raimi films really convinced studios and audiences that the comic book movies could not only be big blockbusters, but they could also go on to become the biggest films of the entire year that they were released in. Even the Sony films themselves, starring Andrew Garfield, whilst they were seen as to be underperformers, particularly the Amazing Spider-Man Part 2, they still managed to both gross over $700 million at the box office itself. So if a very much more of a lukewarm received Spider-Man film can still gross that amount, how much more can a more positively received Spider-Man film gross at the box office overall? And make no mistake, regardless of what you think about the interpretation of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, there's no doubt about it that the MCU Spider-Man has been largely well received by most mainstream audiences, and of course both previous installments have been huge box office successes. Spider-Man Homecoming managed to gross around $880 million when it was released in 2017, and of course in 2019 Spider-Man Far From Home managed to gross over $1 billion itself. So general rule of thumb, always dictates that if you have a franchise that is increasing in terms of its box office numbers with each installment, then the next installment is only going to have an even bigger number and performance at the overall box office. Now, Sony has very much enhanced even more so the anticipation and confidence surrounding this movie by recently announcing that they indeed have plans to continue Tom Holland's role as Spider-Man within the MCU, and they have a whole new trilogy set to be included within the shared universe between Sony and Marvel. Now, I've speculated in previous films that No Way Home will indeed be the inception of seeing a somewhat separate use between Sony and Marvel of the character, and I've speculated that at the end of this we will eventually see the emergence of Miles Morales. Now, maybe this announcement from Amy Pascal contradicts that in many ways. Sony understands that yes, they've got far more confidence in introducing their own universe following the success of the 2 Venom films, but they're not stupid. They do realise that a lot of people are attached to the Tom Holland version. They do realise that the reason why both Homecoming and Far From Home were hugely successful was because of the MCU association. So they don't want to lose that. They don't want to lose on all of that money, because if they take the character back on its own, who knows? If they introduce a solo Spider-Man film and it flops, then where will they go then? So I think it's very smart of them to keep ties with Marvel. It also proves very beneficial for Marvel, of course, having lost many of their OG characters. We saw the demise in many ways of both Tony Stark and Steve Rogers in Endgame. We all assume that this will be the last installment of Thor in Love and Thunder. And of course, we all saw the demise of Natasha Romanoff in Black Widow. And we assume, of course, that Clint Barton will be making his last appearances when the Hawkeye series comes to a close as well. So even more than now, I think Marvel do need Spider-Man's participation within the MCU, and maybe they've realised that it's probably safer now to keep the Peter Parker version within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And this will also give them more time to build plans if they do indeed want to introduce Miles Morales later on down the line. And of course, because we are dealing with the multiverse itself, there's perhaps no reason why they can't have Peter Parker and Miles Morales existing at the same time within the movie continuities. So all of those potential avenues and speculation, again, just ramps up all of the hype and anticipation for Spider-Man No Way Home. Certainly, without question, making it the most anticipated comic book movie of this year alone. So if we look at maybe some of the reasons why it won't make $1 billion, there isn't really much. Of course, we have to consider the pandemic climate that we are always in, and yes, that will have an effect on any big event movie. And of course, at the beginning of the year, we were actually worried as if we would actually get any more event films. We of course saw the emergence of the day and night streaming, and that's where we thought all films and entertainment were heading towards. We thought this would eventually see an extinction in many ways of the theatres. Now, thankfully, that hasn't proved to be the case, and certainly over the last 3 to 4 months, if we haven't reached a complete stage of normality, we've got very much close to it. We've seen over the last certainly 4 to 5 months, big films have huge successes. Of course, James Bond's No Time to Die is the current highest grossing film throughout the boxes. That's shortly coming to arrive at 800 million worldwide. Fast and Furious 9 grossed over 720 million in second place, of course. And other big successes include Godzilla vs. Kong as well, and also A Quiet Place Part 2. Free Guy surprised a lot of people by being successful. And also, of course, Venom Let There Be Carnage, which is now coming up close to 500 million worldwide without a release in China. So we are getting closer now to where we were, I think, a year and a half ago in terms of cinemas very much being prominent and successful. But despite that, there is still very limited territories in further countries that haven't yet fully come out of lockdown or indeed fully opened all cinemas within their territories itself. So that might limit the potential in some areas for No Way Home to gross as much as it potentially can do. Some may raise the issue of fatigue within the Marvel content itself. Of course, now we are seemingly getting a daily dose every single month of content where we factor in the movies and the Disney Plus shows as well. No Way Home will ultimately be the 4th movie within the Marvel Cinematic Universe this year, following Black Widow, Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings, and Eternals as well. But I don't think so. I don't think we've quite yet hit Marvel fatigue, albeit Marvel hasn't quite been firing on all cylinders as what they were in the latter stages of their Phase 3 films as well. But again, we can account for the pandemic for that. And also the fact that both Shang-Chi and Eternals were unknown properties. They both didn't have a release in China, which Spider-Man No Way Home does do. So I don't think we can attribute to any underperformance recently within the MCU as to how that will affect Spider-Man No Way Home's chances. The only other aspect I can see as to maybe causing a bit of a dent into the box office performance would be if indeed Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield don't show up. Now, As I mentioned before, there's a slightly staggered release in terms of this movie, so many people internationally will get the movie 2 days before American audiences. Now, 2 days is an extremely long time on the internet, and as we all know, as soon as many people watch this movie, they're going to go straight on the internet and review it and spoil all of the details out of it. So, as I mentioned before, if many people are looking forward to seeing all 3 Spider-Man actors together, and then the first wave of reviews and reactions confirm that they're not in it, that might diminish some enthusiasm and excitement for the release. Overall, some people, it may even deter them to watch over the movie. I don't think that will be quite enough because, as I said before, with the hints at the multiverse and the various other links between not only the MCU but also Sony's universe as well, I still think there's enough there to get people to be drawn to the movie itself. But if we indeed get a no-show from both Toby and Andy, that may increase the slight antagonism towards this movie itself. Like I said before, that's the main selling point, that's the main event that people are looking out towards. So again, you may get a bit of angry backlash regarding this movie, but I don't think that will be overall enough to stop it hitting that 1 billion threshold. Those are my overall thoughts and feelings on Spider-Man No Way Home in regards to its chances of reaching $1 billion worldwide at the box office. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think it's a sure thing? Do you think because of the pandemic that will still hinder its chances overall? And if you don't think it will make $1 billion, what do you think it will make? Maybe 800, maybe 900 million? If it hits any totals around that, it's still going to be garnered a massive success in my eyes and in most people's eyes as well. So I don't think it's any bit of a disaster if it doesn't hit the billion mark. As I mentioned before, the Marvel brand is as strong as ever, and even if No Way Home doesn't hit the billion, then shortly after they've still got Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and Thor and Love and Thunder, and all of those 3 films are going to be hugely successful in the future line as well. So there's no worries in terms of the commercial success of this movie, but just let me know in the comments if you have any fears or worries as to whether you don't think this will make $1 billion worldwide, and maybe we can discuss further 2 weeks prior to when the film is overall released worldwide. And as usual, when the movie is released, I will of course provide a non-spoiler and spoiler reviews. If you have any other films, both in the past and present, that you would like to see me cover, then let me know in the comments and I'll provide a commentary on those films as well. Please also hit and like those subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.